Live from Columbia, this is Sports Talk on the South Carolina Radio Network. Be a part of tonight's show. Call us at 800-956-7266 or email talkback@sportstalksc.com. Now, here are your hosts for Sports Talk, Phil Kornbluth, Kevin McCrary, and Tom Hayes.
It's hard to, get to this point in the season and be 9-0 and do the things that we did. So, of course, I enjoyed it and celebrated, with my teammates and myself. But, I just make sure I stay focused and make sure that's not the main priority, to celebrate a win because, we have another one, a big one this week.
It almost feels like we haven't played at home this year. It's going to be great to come out here at Williams Spot Stadium and play in front of our home crowd.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome into Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network here on a Monday night from downtown Columbia. Welcome back into the program. Looking forward to another great week with you here on Sports Talk. K-Mac's strike is over. He is back. The Lakers won a game, so he has ended his hunger strike and his Sports Talk strike. I imagine you had a meal over the weekend, and now you're back in your normal place. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you, Corn.
Yeah,
I appreciate it.
And then you went out and lost to the Knicks. Pro, good to have you with us. How are you?
I did.
I'm doing quite well, thank you.
Steak Man is here as well. 800-956-7266 is the number. And our email talkback at sportstalksc.com and on Twitter at sportstalksc. The Twitter timeline has been smoking over the weekend. We appreciate all of you who share your thoughts with us, good, bad, and indifference. Love to hear from you no matter what's on your mind. And some of you don't have very much on your mind, but we love to hear from you nonetheless. And tonight we'll take your phone calls. Talk about Clemson clearing that big hurdle. Really, all that's left between them and the playoff is South Carolina. Syracuse, no problem. Wake Forest, no problem. Now, K-Mac, you're over here. You're about to bust a gut
That's
here.
just
South Carolina, rival game in Columbia. The Gamecocks are getting better by the game under Sean Elliott. You can't argue that they're not.
A double-digit favorite.
Doesn't matter. I mean,
Yes,
that does not correlate to how the game actually will be played. Now, I have said I think Clemson could post 70 on the Gamecocks.
Yes, that being said, anything can happen.
But anything can happen. You know what we're going to do? That week, we're going to open the window and we're going to throw the record books right out.
No, not me. I'm going to keep the record book right there in front of me.
I do think the biggest opponent they have right now, and which is why coaches get gray hair, is Clemson. Because right now, if any of those players are sitting there saying, well, no problem, Dabo is going to be all in their face, because that is when your team starts to deteriorate. They can just walk on the field and beat somebody. So he's going to shake that off of them. Watch every little thing they did wrong against Florida State. They're hearing about it right now in meetings.
Well, I mean, this has been a zoned-in team all season long. Game to game, whether it was Wofford or Appalachian or Notre Dame or Louisville or Florida State, they haven't always played perfectly. They haven't always scored on every possession, haven't stopped a team on every possession.
They haven't stunk up the joint, though.
No, they haven't. And they've always been able to go out and get that win some way, somehow, when they've had to go snatch it away. We'll be right back. 800-956-7266 is our number here on Sports Talk. Coming up tonight on the program, your phone calls. Love to get your thoughts about the weekend. You saw South Carolina go up and give Tennessee a great battle to the very, very end. Probably did a lot more than most thought they would do. You saw Clemson go out and pretty much dominate Florida State for 59 minutes after giving up a quick touchdown on the second play of the game. And the Tigers are now number 1 by the AP. They should be. I would imagine they'll be number 1 by the committee tomorrow night, even though the committee might look at that Alabama win over LSU and think long and hard about Alabama. I don't think they take a one-loss Alabama team and have them jump over an unbeaten Clemson team that beat a Florida State team at home too, like Alabama beat an LSU team. But what about that defense by Kirby Smart holding LSU to 185 yards, holding Fournette to, 40-something yards rushing? Just a ridiculous defensive effort by Kirby Smart, who, of course, is right there in the conversation, we think, with the South Carolina job. A good weekend for him from the standpoint of people saying, hey, or him saying, hey, look at me.
Hey, man, he's a good defensive coordinator.
I tell you what, with that front seven,
he can't bring those with him.
That's precisely my point.
Yeah.
When you got a 300-plus pound nose tackle jumping over the center, I mean, physically flying, that scares you. I told you that front seven, Fournette was in for a long night.
Yeah, I still get nervous about defensive coordinators becoming head coaches, especially when they're coming from these big programs. It's a big, big difference. We do have to give Sean Elliott a ton of credit for what he's done. I still don't think he's going to get the job at the end of the day. I just think most people are going to want a clean break and a fresh start. But what he's done, he has those guys playing hard. South Carolina is playing its best football of the season right now, despite everything.
Why do you think, and you say that, why do you think people feel they need a clean start and a break? Because they're really, okay, forget this season. This season has been a wash for South Carolina. Besides what Spurrier did, I mean, it's been a disaster from a weather standpoint. This is a team that come Saturday against Florida will be playing its first home game in like 7 weeks. Nobody else in the country has had to go through that kind of disruption. But anyway, that being the case, forget about this year. So last year they went 7 games after going 3 years in a row, winning 11 games and being among the top 10 in the country for the most part. So you're one season removed from your high water mark. Why would people want to wash their hands totally of the people who helped get it there and just say we've got to start over? I don't
think you do it
completely understand that.
Yeah, and Herman, I know he's a flavor of the month, and he's the next great thing, and he's more of a proven guy because he's winning now at Houston in his first year. But Sean Elliott inherited just an impossible situation, and they could have gotten blown out at Texas A&M. And Tennessee, I mean, they're up 17-0. That you blink, and Tennessee's moving up and down the field like it's easy, and the guys didn't back down. They kept playing. The defense made all the stops, and they're calling plays. They're letting it all hang out. I mean, it's very impressive to me that you're never happy. If you're South Carolina, you're not happy with a loss, and their moral victories don't mean anything. But you have to be proud that your players and your program is still fighting. They didn't just mail it in and go, up, this season's gone. I don't really care. I don't care who the next coach is. I want to look to transfer. I just want to look into the NFL. Those guys are out there playing hard, playing for each other, playing for their school, and that's all you could ask for at this point. And Sean Elliott and G.A. Mangus especially, let's give G.A. Mangus a heck of a pat on the back for the way he's calling plays there. They were right there in position to beat Tennessee at Tennessee, and I'll be interested to see how they play against a good Florida team this week back at home. If he can get that kind of performance again, if they play like they did against Tennessee and stay that competitive, you have to put him near the top of the list. It's a risky move, but he almost deserves it. And you go, okay, well, maybe the program just needs tweaked a little bit. Maybe they need some more players. Yes, we messed up recruiting. We get the right guy in place there to help land some guys. We tweak some things on defense and see what the problem there is. Is this John Hoke's job, or do we need to bring somebody else in? Maybe it's just those few tweaks, and he can keep the machine going instead of just blowing the whole thing up. That's something that becomes with each passing game that South Carolina plays like they did last week. I think that needs to be talked about.
Let me say this real quick for those Look, a hire has to be done in black and white, and you got to kind of sometimes set your emotions aside. But I'm going to use Clemson as an example here. And when Terry Don Phillips promoted Dabo Swinney, the head coach, as an interim coach after Tommy Bowden resigned, he didn't do it strictly from a black and white standpoint. He went on his emotions too, and he went on what he had seen in the background and how Dabo Swinney had carried himself and had prepared himself in his role of receivers coach and recruiting coordinator when he had that position at Clemson. And he made somewhat of an emotional decision. Mm-hmm. Now, go
Stuck
listen.
His neck out.
Go listen to if you haven't listened to it, go to our website and pull up KMAC's post-game coverage from Saturday and listen to Sean Elliott's comments after the game. And, that's the kind of stuff that resonates with players and resonates with families. It goes back to recruiting, but it also tells me where he is in terms of how he views his job. Mm-hmm. That for him, this is a life stop. This isn't something that he's trying to use as a stepping stone to something else. To him, it is a life position. And how much of that, if you're Ray Tanner, and Ray's an emotional guy. We've seen him cry at the drop of a foul ball. Mm-hmm. Not really, but you know what I mean? He is an emotional guy.
There's crying in baseball sometimes.
Will he allow some emotion to enter into this thing and listen to what Sean Elliott has said and how he's resonating with his players and how they responded to him? Or is it strictly black and white and go and look at the flavor of the month?
I don't think Ray Tanner works that way, Pro.
Well, here's the key. I like to look at a guy in an untenable situation. For instance, you get a call at midnight. The coach is stepping down. Mm-hmm. Yeah, coach, what's the deal, coach? I want you to be the interim head coach. Now, I will tell you this. If I'm Sean Elliott and I stood there that Tuesday at that press conference, I may have looked like I was nervous or freaked or something is a little bit above me at this point in time. He came in there, was as smooth as you could be in his presentation of saying, this is what we're going to do, that I'm taking the reins. He looked like he was ready to accept the head coaching job right then and there. And I thought it was interesting that he emphatically, when he was asked the question, I didn't take this to go through 6 games and just mail it in.
Well, I think if Ray looks at him with an open mind, and who knows if Ray had his mind made up after Spurrier stepped down, if Ray already had his mind made up as to who he wants to get. If he has an open mind and takes a good hard look at what Sean has done to this point and what he may do moving forward, things could change. I mean, information that we've had, others have had, all points towards Tom Herman right now, but nothing's done yet, at least as far as we know. And there's still an opportunity here because Sean's the only one who's in that position to impress Ray right under his nose. And like you said, if they go out and beat Florida, and I'm not going to think that's out of the realm of possibility. Where are they, 26-point underdogs?
Is that high? I know Clemson's favored by 26.
Well, maybe South
Carolina's
I've got
a little
it
closer.
Confused.
Yeah,
what was South Carolina?
I think they're 10 or 12.
Okay, even that. I mean, I think I would take. Look, I mean, Florida needed a late field goal to beat Vanderbilt.
They're still better than that. They just had that was their ugly game. They got it out of their system. But I thought they were going to get beat by 50 against Tennessee. Going in, the matchup didn't look good. South Carolina hasn't played really good offenses yet, sans North Carolina, and everybody's still trying to figure out how they beat the Tar Heels. Probably they haven't lost since.
Interceptions by the quarterback.
But that being said, they went out there and they competed. The same against Texas A&M. They really are competing at a high level. And you would get back to the Dabo comparison. He said when he took over that job at Clemson, hey, this isn't a jalapa. It needs an oil change and some new tires, and we can do that. And he had to tweak some things, and it took him a while to really get it going. But maybe that's where South Carolina is.
If you can get Perry Orth to complete 20 passes in a game and throw for 233 yards
touchdowns
and 0
G.A.
interceptions,
Mangus is good.
What does that tell you about what you got? We'll be right back. Our Sports Talk presented by South Carolina soybean farmers and their checkoff. Learn more at scsoybeans.org. Pork powered by Soy. I was at Clemson Saturday. What an atmosphere that was. K-Mac was up on Rocky Top. Once again, Sports Talk, your only sports talk show in the state, covering the Gamecocks and the Tigers in person everywhere they go. K-Mac will be at Syracuse this week with the Tigers. I won't have to drive very far for a change. Be able to cover the Gamecocks in Florida. Williams-Brice Pro will be there too. I'm sure he was on his couch watching both of them on Saturday. To your phone calls, we'll update some news notes as we go on through the program. Some interesting things to pass along to you. Stay tuned for that. But let's jump to your calls. And it is Big Chris in Greenwood. Why do they call you Big Chris, Big Chris?
I'm just a big guy and played football back in the day, but man, I love you guys' show and enjoy listening to you.
Well, thank you. Good to have you.
Yeah, I want to touch on what you guys are already talking about with the coaching stuff. I could go into a bunch of stuff, but definitely they're doing it Clemson up there. Dabo Swinney, like you guys said, stepped in. Kids want to play for him. And he, like K-Mac said, I don't think they had a real bad car up there when he took over. They just needed to be some changing and a cultural change. And the same thing at USC. I really feel like Sean Elliott would probably be a great guy down there and would love to really kind of see him stay there. But that program, it just, to me, needs a cultural change. You got to go in there and change a lot of things with the recruiting, maybe the whole situation of the fans. I mean, it's you expect them to do good to a certain extent, and then they lose a game, and they win a game, lose a game. And like I said, I love what Coach Spurrier had done down there to a certain extent. But I feel like he dropped the ball the last couple of years on some of these athletes. I hear you guys talk about 4- and 5-star players all the time. I just feel like these high school kids, you got to go watch them play and watch the passion that they play with, because that's what the results come from on the field. And I just like to hear what you guys
would they rather have had Mason Rudolph starting against Tennessee Saturday or Perry Orth? They made mistakes, and that's the thing. People get caught up in a name with the coach. Okay, I mean, what does Tom Herman really offer that Sean Elliott doesn't? Okay, he's a name. He's at Houston. He has one more year. He has 9 games head coaching experience to Sean Elliott's 3. Mm-hmm. But you still have to have the right guy that's going to put together the right staff. That's going to be very important, and have the right plan in place. And one advantage for Sean Elliott, to me, that's a huge plus that you can't overlook. And you mentioned this, Corn, is he is from the state of South Carolina. He grew up in Camden. He understands the dynamics of the state, and some of the best coaches at South Carolina more so assistant coaches, they're the people that get the geography and the personality of this state. Ellis Johnson, Brad Lawing, these are guys that have been in this state for decades. They know how to work the high schools. They know what the culture's like, the people, how to recruit these guys, who you're supposed to talk to in the communities. That's very important. You bring in some of these out-of-state people, they don't always have that kind of advantage. Mm-hmm. And that's one thing I think Ray Tanner has an advantage. He's been in this state for decades, and he knows that too. So he's going to be in a unique position to make the right hire.
Well, Herman does come highly acclaimed. He was the Broyles Award winner last year. He did a great job at his stops before Ohio State. Obviously did a great job there, and it's carried over to his Houston situation. Back in a moment. number. Danny Cannell's got Clemson number 2 projected in the playoff rankings tomorrow with Ohio State 1. I didn't see who 3. Who do you have 3?
Baylor.
Baylor 3 and Alabama 4. We shall see. I don't see how you demote Clemson. They beat Florida State. They beat them by 10 points.
Yeah, they'll be number 1.
How you could even consider demoting them off of that performance.
The SEC got a favor, though, from Arkansas. Courtesy Arkansas, because Ole Miss would have won the West. Nobody would have been at the championship table. But I think Alabama has a shot now.
All right, a couple of quick things. Tony Elliott said today, Clemson's co-offensive coordinator, that running back Zach Brooks is going to make this his final season. He wants to be listed as a senior. He's on track to graduate. And he says right now, Brooks is planning to make this his last Clemson. ACC Players of the Week, Mitch Hyatt, Clemson offensive lineman, and Clemson linebacker B.J. Goodson. Deshaun Watson, of course, had another huge game, over 400 yards of total offense in leading the Tigers to the victory. Here's a little bit of what he had to say after the win on Saturday. Okay, we'll get to that in just a moment. Let's get back to your phone calls and go to Dave in North Charleston. Dave, welcome into Sports Talk. How are you?
How you doing, guys?
Good.
Hey, I was just, I felt so bad for Adams. Had the ball and on the 15-yard line and then lose it on a fumble. I just felt for him. I feel for him when he had to go in that locker room and face the other guys. But I hope the team didn't ride him too hard because mistakes, I guess, happen. But he had it. It was so close. I mean,
yeah,
he was
trying to make a play.
Yeah, it was an effort error. He was trying to make a play. He was trying to get in the end zone,
and we've seen him do that before, break a couple tackles and score. And I'll say this: Sean Elliott was tearing up when he was talking about Adams and what he told them, and the players picked them up. I mean, one thing about this team, they really are together. They don't seem like a downtrodden, beaten bunch. Now, they were hurting because they lost a tough game, but I think they're playing with a chip on their shoulder, and they know that nobody gave them a chance against Tennessee, and they had those guys on the ropes. There were 108,000 fans sitting on their hands there at the end of that game at Neyland Stadium, and
still got to cover up the football with 2 hands.
Yeah, I mean,
situation. You got to put 2 hands on
and that's what teams that aren't good, that's how they lose. And South Carolina, still at the end of the day, there's a reason why Steve Spurrier is crossing off things on his bucket list right now. He saw this team and said they're no good. They have problems that aren't going to be fixed in 6 games by Sean Elliott. The fact that they're out competing in the Southeastern Conference right now against some pretty good teams in the Southeastern Conference that have been ranked this year is impressive. Their problems aren't going to be solved until they go out and bring in kids and develop kids that can fill a lot of the holes that they have on their roster right now, more playmakers.
All right. By the way, speaking of Spurrier, he was asked today if he'll be at the USC-Florida game Saturday. He says he will not. He told the AP, quote, "It's not my place," end quote, to be at South Carolina football games. So,
and he's right. I mean, he would be a distraction. It wouldn't be fair to Sean Elliott for him to be if he's in the stadium, anywhere. If he's sitting in the stands, they're going to find him. A camera's going to be on him.
Wear a mask.
He just, I next year maybe, or the year after, he'll come back eventually. But right now, he doesn't really need to be there.
All right, back to your calls. 800-956-7266 is the number. Mike in Somerville, welcome into Sports Talk. How are you?
Doing well, thank you. I was just curious because I've watched Carolina's wins and losses, but never really watched them that closely. How would you grade out Sean Elliott's performance as a position coach?
As a position coach, you mean during his entire stay at South Carolina, or just this year?
The whole year. The whole time he's been there, his tenure there.
I'd have to grade it out as a
B minus,
about a B plus. Yeah, I was going to say B plus. I mean, they haven't been dominant. They haven't been awful, but he has he's developed some young players. They've had some holes on their offensive line over the years for one reason or another. He's had to deal with a good number of injuries on that offensive line. You think about Matulis going down constantly, Waltrip being hurt the last couple of years, got nothing out of the Stadnick players for the most part. And they've made some mistakes in recruiting on the offensive line. And they've got some young guys who the jury's still out on them. You know, Donnell Stanley, L.J. Park. They had the kid that came in from Dillon, the Shrine Bowl center. He ended up transferring after 1 year. I mean, they've had some issues there, but I think by and large they've been pretty good.
But if you remember, Clayton Stadnick, before he lost all the weight, had to be rushed into a center position as a freshman during their last 11-3 season.
Right. But his brother, who was the highly acclaimed player, whether it was injury or whatever, just never played. Never played. What would you say, sir?
I was just wondering how much that should play into the overall decision making on whether he should be promoted to head coach.
But I mean, I think it does factor. You want a guy that knows how to coach and run his position. Now, when you become a coach, though, it's really more about how you're going to oversee the program.
Be a head coach.
And be a head coach, and who you're going to put in a position to succeed. You really are.
I mean, he ran the running game. Now, when he came in, he brought the zone read running game to complement what Spurrier was doing with the passing game. And look, when you had Marcus Lattimore and you had Mike Davis, you had 1,000-yard rushers there. So he was doing a good job with his zone read running game. And that meant the offensive line had to be doing a pretty good job. So he's had a couple 1,000-yard rushers in there. So you'd have to give him some kudos for that. But I would say overall, I'd say about a B+.
And they had some bust on the offensive line Saturday. They only gave up 1 sack, but they had people wanted to know why Lorenzo Nunez didn't play more. He went in and didn't get the call and just made something up on the fly that ended up being a bust. Now so they got him out there and got somebody else in. Perry Orth, people are like, oh, why didn't Nunez play more? I mean, Perry Orth did everything right in that game that he had to do to give them a chance to win. So
you think Deshaun Watson didn't get the call when he spiked the ball on third down?
It happens. But they did have plays where guys they still
haven't gotten a good explanation about that. Not that it turned out to be a big deal.
Bullets are flying out there. But they always have those games, South Carolina, where they call a play. And this has been happening since Elliott was a position coach and really beyond, where they just open up the floodgates, where it's just like somebody just forgot that they're supposed to block a guy. Well, and he comes in free.
Watching the tape,
you only get so many plays and you bust a few of them. That adds up.
Watching the tape last night, I mean, South Carolina's, especially David Williams, I see why he doesn't play that much, because he cannot pick up the blitz. He dives at the legs of the linebacker or the lineman who's come through, and time after time he misses. And I don't know if that's the way he's taught or he's just missing his reads or whatever. But as a running back, you've got to be able to pick up that blitz, and that's one of the reasons why Tennessee have 7 tackles for loss. They had 1 sack, but they did put pressure on North. That's been a little bit of problem too. The running backs picking up the blitz when it breaks through the line. All right, quickly back to the phones we go, and it is Frank in Lexington with us next here on Sports Talk. Good evening. How are you?
Hello.
Hey, Frank. How you doing?
Just a hypothetical question, and I'll hang up and listen. Sean Elliott becomes the head coach. G.A. Mangus is the offensive coordinator. John Hoke and Lorenzo Ward are gone, but we bring in Ellis Johnson and Brad Lawing. What do y'all think about that?
You're not going to get Brad Lawing. He's at Florida State under contract down there.
Never say never.
Well, yeah, you never say never.
I think that would fly quite well with most people. Some people might object to Ellis. I don't know why, but simply because he's come through here before and he's a little older. But I still think he's got a lot of good football left in him. And you listen to him on our show, he's never lost his edge. He still has a great desire to recruit. I mean, this is who's ready to slow down as a recruiter. He's ready to get back out and beat the bushes.
He wants to get his groceries he can work with.
Shane Beamer, he's looking for a job at the end of the season. There's some guys out there if they wanted to get the band back together.
All right, thanks for the phone call. We appreciate it. Back in a moment.